to begin.
Thanks, JR. Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Everett, and most of you know me by now, I think, but I'm the Deputy Director at First Five Nebraska and Chief Lobbyist / Policy Manager who oversees the strategy of the work that we do here, both at the state and federal level. So today's call, we've asked everyone to join to discuss LB304. So what I would like to do is I will talk about the bill. I will talk about where we're at right now in the process of the bill. I will go through what the strategy is looking like right now and what we're trying to get accomplished, and then discuss areas of where we need support and help, and then end it with questions that you have, the areas that you would like to get more involved in, or suggestions that you might have on how else you think that we can do advocacy around this specific bill. Instead of doing a PowerPoint, there are several documents on LB304 and several links for the bill. There is a web page that we've launched. There's an FAQ sheet. I'm going to have JR throughout this conversation put in links in the chat so you can go on the web page and find that information. But what I really wanted this conversation to be is more, again, open-ended, more of a conversation instead of a presentation, right? Because I really do want feedback and suggestions and just thoughts around the direction of LB304. So again, while there be a formal Q&A at the very end, if there are immediate questions that you have with what I'm talking about, just so that we don't forget it, please go ahead and just interrupt me if it's pertinent to the conversation. And then if not, go ahead and just wait till the very end for those questions. So LB304. LB304 is the bill number for a child care subsidy bill. It was introduced last year by Senator DeBoer. It was referred to the Health and Human Services Committee, and it's still currently in committee right now. The bill removes the current sunset for the income eligibility limits that we have in our state. Right now, the limits are at 185% FPL. If it moves forward and passes, it would remain that limit for the foreseeable future, right? The bill itself removes the sunset. It does not put, or the expiration date, it does not put another date on it. So it makes that 185% permanent. For a family of four, that means that those families making $59,000 would qualify for child care subsidy. Unfortunately, the bill is in committee, and it had a rather large fiscal note or money that was attached to it, right? So in order for this bill to pass, there's a certain amount of money that the department has to come up with in order to make sure that they can continue that eligibility at 185%. So right now, it's looking like the number is anywhere, depending on who you talk to, right? The fiscal note is a little bit hazy, but they say that for the first year, it would be about $10 million-ish, and then every fiscal year after that, it would be $14 million. The reason why the fiscal note wasn't as much of a concern in the previous sessions when we had originally introduced this bill was because they had paid for this expansion through federal dollars. So the American Rescue Plan Act, right, that big ARPA bill, the COVID dollars that came to our state, we were able to use some of those some of that funding to expand the subsidy eligibility so that we could, again, serve more families up to 185% FPL. So now, because we do not have federal dollars anymore, the state will have to come up with the difference. For the most part, that's going to be the biggest struggle, is finding the money and figuring out where it will come from every single year. So if we do not, right, have and pass this bill, we would move back down to where we were previously, which was around 130% FPL. And so for a family of four, that would mean that only those families that make $42,000 or less would qualify for child care subsidy. So that is a big difference between 42,000 and 59,000. Right now, we're estimating that over 2,500 families and over 4,000 kids will be impacted because of this possible change. Since the bill is currently in committee, the first step to moving this bill at all will be to get it out of committee. So for the next 3 months, our strategy is really to increase the environment. And as you guys have been doing really well, is to make 304 a priority, not just for the early childhood community, but for other senators. Since the bill is in the Health and Human Services Committee, we do have some support, but there are others on the committee, right, who have other priorities. So we started this strategy by kind of officially launching this 304 work at the Thriving Conference. How many of you were actually able to attend that conference? Were many of you able to attend? Just like a show of kind of visual hands, nods, yes. Robert's like, yes. Thanks. So if you were able to stay until the very end, and if you were able to visit our booth, you saw several materials that we hope that you were able to pick up. We had yard signs that said things like protect childcare for working families with a QR code that linked directly back to our webpage. We had FAQ sheets or in policy briefs attached to the yard signs, right? And then we also had, during the last panel discussion, we had 5 state senators, excuse me, discuss early childhood, but they also really focused on 304. Senator DeBoer, who had introduced the bill, talked about 304 and how this bill is not just a priority for her next session, but it's her legacy bill. So we got really great media coverage. We got really great publicity. Our hope is to build upon that, right? So let me go through what the next 3 months are going to look like, and then let me talk about what we're hoping to see next session. So for the next 3 months, as I mentioned, the priority is going to be to build the environment to make LB304 a very, what am I trying to say? A very public bill, right? And to make sure that advocates and people who want to support this bill have the resources and capacity to be supporting and to be out there speaking and have the information that they need to be very strong advocates for this work. The interesting thing, though, right, is that at the same time that we are talking about childcare, I do just want to kind of caveat it with saying that over the next 3 months, while we are emphasizing the importance of 304, there is also going to be some elevating of around things like Medicaid and SNAP because of the federal changes that have come down through the One Big Beautiful Bill or HR 1, right? So there's going to be a little bit of a competing interests a bit. We have always, and we will continue to support Medicaid and SNAP and other issues, but know full well that LB 304 is still going to be our biggest priority, and it's the one that we're going to fight to get funding for. So communication wise, well, actually, before I go there, is there any questions just about the bill itself and where it's at before I move into kind of the strategy? Okay. So let's talk about what we're going to do over the next 3 months. So really, right, it's going to be around communications. So what we have done, and hopefully what you've been able to see on our website, which JR, if you can link if you haven't already, our website page. We have updated and have a brand new LB304 webpage on our First Five Nebraska page. It has the information about the bill. It has links, and it will have links to the FAQ document, both in English and in Spanish. And it will have kind of some suggestions on if you want to get involved, what you can do. We also have yard signs developed, and we will continue to have yard signs available for people that want them. If you're doing presentations, if you're attending community events, if you are wanting to put them in your own childcare yard or your own front yard, we will have kind of a reserve of, or not a reserve, but like a large amount of signs available at our office at any time. So if you would like to take any of those or you need some, please reach out to JR and we will make sure to get you those signs. In addition to that, one of the things that we will be doing in terms of added resources is we will be providing social media posts that you yourself can put up on your own platforms. There will be a box folder that everyone will be able to access. Every week, we will send out not only instructions on how to access the box, but also copy, so language that you can simply cut and paste and put onto your platforms. We will make sure that there's two options available to you, right? You can either repost and share what First Five Nebraska has already posted, or you can post and share something that's going to be a little bit more generic in different colors. That won't be First Five Nebraska branded, but it'll be ones that you yourself can take and change however you want. But the important part here is what we're trying to emphasize is some coordination and almost like building up a movement so that people can see the same message, the same social graphics being displayed across different various platforms from different people. This, even though we will have this information available to you, this does not, please do not think that this precludes you from posting however you want, right? We are only here to offer resources and support to you, but please feel free to use what we have put together to put together your own social posts how you think would be most appropriate for your channels or for your audiences. In addition to that, what we are doing and what we need help with is we are going to establish a system to collect and gather stories from people, from families, providers, partners, stakeholders in the space, so those economic developers, those business leaders, about why LB304, why childcare subsidy is so important to them. Our hope is that, not our hope, what we are going to be doing is we're going to be using different mediums to translate these stories publicly. So we're going to be doing a lot more videos. We're going to be doing a lot more, again, social posts or video posts, right? Our hope is that we'll be able to kind of link things up to like our YouTube or put them onto our website so people can view. But these stories, another, again, resource for you yourself to be able to take with you when you're going out and about either, again, talking to senators, talking to stakeholders. Our hope is that this is a available resource for you, a library of resource for you, so that you can also use what you think would be appropriate for your district, right? So our hope is that we don't just get the same type of voice, but we get a variety of voices discussing subsidy through different lenses. We will need help thinking through and gathering the right voices for those stories. So if you do have people that you think would be really well spoken, people that you think would be really great on camera and would be willing to talk about why this is such an important bill to them, please again email JR so we can get those videos up and running. That information, though, will also be available in the box folder. There are going to be several public events that I have already tried to collect, but I would also love feedback on other public events that you think would be relevant for this information. So I already know that people have public events in Lincoln. For instance, Lincoln Littles has a conference coming up in October. There's a Business and Childcare Summit in November in Omaha. I know that there's different kind of ESU summits possibly or conferences throughout the state in different months. But if there is a community event or something that you guys are doing and would love to have a table on 304 and you would love to kind of be the spokesperson for 304 at that event, please let me know, or please let JR know so that we can get information for you and so we can collect where people are going to be, right? I think the most important part for any of this work is coordination and collaboration to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts, but also making sure that we are getting you the resources in a timely manner. We will continue to update our box folder and our media channels with the most recent information, depending on if things change, right? Because things might change. We're still trying to get, right, a more detailed or more accurate number on the amount of kids and families that will be impacted from this. But what we also know, right, is that things might change based on what's happening in the news. And so our hope is that we will be able to, again, help provide feedback on the best and right approach. Because things like, for instance, like the federal government, right, might possibly go into a government shutdown in the next week or so. And if that's the case, services will be impacted. So those are the types of things that we will just monitor and make sure that we provide guidance on in case we want to make sure, right, we hit the right tone. On the same side, we will be doing and pushing out news stories and op-eds. And we will, again, if there is interest from folks, if you would like to write an op-ed or if you would like to be on the news, we would love to get some voices for that work. Our big priority for the next 3 months is to get information into the hands of the Health and Human Services Committee members. So those members right now, right? Senator Brian Hardin, who's the chair, Senator John Frederickson, who's the vice chair, Senator Ballard, Senator Ben Hansen, Senator Glenn Meyer, Senator Dan Quick, and Senator Merv Reapy. We need as much support as we possibly can to target those senators to help them understand why 304 is so important. If the bill does not come out of committee quickly when session starts, it'll be a lot harder for it to be placed on general file and to move up in the legislative process. Since we only have 60 days, right, it's really important that we hit the ground running at the very beginning. For us, we already know that Senator Frederickson and Senator Quick are pretty strong advocates for this bill. So the other members that I mentioned, like Senator Ballard, Senator Meyer, Senator Reapy, Senator Hardin, all of those senators would love to hear from constituents and learn about why 304 is so important. If you do feel comfortable, I would encourage you to reach out to your health and to those members if they are your senator, or even if you would like to talk to them to explain why this bill is important. There is no like timeline or deadline for doing that, right? Anytime you want to reach out, anytime you want to send a letter, anytime you want to be able to talk about this bill to them is great. We're going to encourage people to continue to contact their senators throughout this next 3 months and then throughout session. The more that they hear about this bill, the better chance it has of succeeding next session. In addition to obviously asking folks to reach out, we are also going to have a goal of targeting senators at least 4 times prior to session starting. And so what does that mean, right? It means that we are going to hopefully make sure that every senator gets a tailored fact sheet so that they understand what 304 is. We're going to make sure that every senator hears from their constituents. We're going to make sure that every senator possibly has a meeting with First Five or has a note from First Five or has a note from advocates, some other touch point, right? It doesn't mean that we're going to try to meet with every senator 4 times, but the hope is that we're going to build up enough momentum and be able to provide enough information so that advocates, so that other stakeholders, so that First Five and other advocacy organizations can make sure that we reach out to these senators at least 4 times. That's the goal that we're trying to hit. Again, we do not need to say that 4 has to be the number. I'm just trying to emphasize that we're really trying to hit these senators as much as we possibly can before session even starts. The other thing that we're thinking through, which I think is also pretty unique, is that Senator Fisher, our US Senator, just introduced her reauthorization of the Child Care Development Block Grant. Right, the Child Care Development Block Grant is the program, it's the funding mechanism, right, for child care subsidy. She just introduced her reauthorization bill last week. So we have this really strong federal leader in childcare. But what's really fascinating, right, is that as she's trying to get this bill passed in this Congress, her states possibly might drop down to one of the worst in the country in terms of access to childcare subsidy. We're really trying to emphasize why both Senator Fisher's bill has to pass and why LB304 has to pass in order to make sure that our childcare subsidy is where it should be for the time being, right? We need to make sure that both of those things pass. If 304 doesn't pass, right, it does drop our state down to 48th in the country. So that's what we're really trying to target for the next 3 months. Does anybody have questions about what the next 3 months kind of look like, what we're trying to do? Before I move on to kind of our general plans, right? We're still thinking some stuff through, but some of the public events that we're hoping to have next session. Okay. You guys better be having a lot of questions at the end. I can't, uh, so that's what we're doing, right, for 3 months, right? 3 months is going to go by so quick, especially because the holiday seasons are right around the corner. Session starts January 7th. It ends what's anticipating right now is most likely the end of April, right? It can always end sooner depending on if they like to adjourn sooner, right? The only constitutional thing that they were required to do every year, right, is to pass a budget. So normally, right, once they pass that budget, then it kind of peters out a bit until they adjourn. So we need to do a couple of things at the very beginning, right? So session starts January 7th. We will have a press conference. The press conference will be in the rotunda. We need as many people as possible to attend that press conference. The goal is to have signs and to stand there with state senators, have people provide some remarks about why LB 304 is important. The press conference has not been scheduled yet, but our goal is to probably hit sometime around day 2 or day 3 of session, right? So at the very beginning. We don't want it to get drowned out. We want to make sure that people understand why this is important at the very, very beginning. In addition to a press conference, what we are thinking through is we would like to do a public visibility event of some sort every week. So what does that mean, right? And we have not come to a decision about that, but what it could look like, right, is that it could look like we have and we provide support to have stakeholders come to the Capitol, maybe wearing buttons, maybe having info sheets, and talking and walking around to the different offices and talking to senators. It might look like we have some sort of rally on the Capitol steps talking about LB 304. It might look like we have some sort of I don't know. Again, it might be that we have some videos of like going to the Capitol, having some senators be on, doing some TikTok dance. No, no TikTok dances, I promise. But something, right? Something visible event of some sort so that publicly people can see, because the concern, right, is that it will people will understand what 304 does, but if they don't see it every day, if it's not in their face every day, then it's going to get pushed aside and other priorities are going to come to fruition. So, press conference, some sort of weekly public visibility event, and that's something that we are First Five Nebraska and our other kind of groups that we function with, and some of the funders are trying to think through like how do we resource that out, right? So we're not asking folks to like take days off or do something like that. We are thinking through also how to resource and support that capacity if that is something that we think is needed. We also need support with the governor. I see Kim that you just mentioned that in there, right? We need to do some public visibility work with Governor Pillen. Right now, he has not stated one way or the other whether or not he likes this bill. But what we do know is um, because of the budget outlook, because of the federal things that are coming through, money is going to be extremely tight, right? And everyone's going to be fighting for money. So know that we are thinking about what a Governor Pillen event looks like. But please, while we think about this, do not hesitate if you have an interest in reaching out to him and talk and sending a letter, calling, whatever, right, about 304. The only thing, right, that's really important about any of this type of outreach is making sure that we use the right data points, making sure that we have the right information, right, and making sure that we are cordial, right? Professional, right? We don't want to go out there and call people idiots or go out there and tell them that you're stupid, right? All of this, making sure that we're cordial and isn't very important. But please know that if you ever have an interest or say, hey, look, this senator's coming to my program or this person's coming here would be a great voice for this work. Our hope again is to make sure that 304 page and that box folder is updated every week so that you can just simply pull that information off and can go about. The only thing again that I would emphasize is ongoing coordination with us and specifically through JR. But yes, Governor Pillen right now, again, is something that we are going to have to prioritize. And he will be prioritized as we continue on this communications work in the fall and then obviously session next year. Outside of a public visibility event, a press conference, the other thing that we're trying to think through is would there be again opportunities for constituents, people who have a strong interest in this in LB304 and want to support it, does it make sense? And what would kind of a longer term press strategy look like? Right? We've talked a lot about how we're going to communicate, but especially when session hits, the more this bill is in the news and the more that people realize that we will drop down to 48th in the country, especially because I think as most people, I don't know if people saw, but there were a couple of big news stories released recently around like Omaha and Lincoln as metropolitan cities dropping significantly compared to their the neighboring cities that have the same population in different states, right? We've dropped significantly because we're not seeing the same growth. We're not seeing the same growth in wages, the same growth in businesses coming into the state. And part of that, right, a good part of that, I would argue, is because of childcare. And so, how are we making sure that when these conversations are out there in the public, we are tying childcare as much as possible to that? Because people need to understand, right, that 304, if it doesn't pass, will destabilize the system. The session work is going to get a lot busier, right? There's going to be a lot more information and a lot more work that's going to happen once session starts. But right now, that is kind of the kind of backbone, the skeleton of what we're working on for public events. Obviously, we are still going to be doing the thing where we lean on other groups and ask folks to help us with lobbying efforts, right? We're going to lean on the chambers. We're going to lean on our other advocacy partners like Appleseed and Open Sky to help us push 304 through lobbying ways. That is where we're at right now with 304 and where we are right now in terms of strategy. So this is a great, I love the fact that we were able to, and that JR was able to put this meeting together really quickly. Obviously, this is going to be recorded and she'll send it out to the rest of the registrants who are on it. But what my hope is, right, and one thing that I'm trying to think through and I would love feedback on is what is the best way for these updates to come? Is it through weekly emails? Is it through maybe more of these calls to talk about what's happening with the strategy? Because really, right, it's not just first five, it's not first five just doing this, right? My hope is that this is a movement that everybody is involved and everybody feels some shared leadership and ownership in 304. So how is the best way to strategize on this that would work for folks in the best way, knowing full well that everyone has day jobs, everyone has other priorities that they have to do with their work and families and all that stuff. Does something like this work? Does like a 411 call like this work? Because what it could really turn into, right, is like a conversation at the very beginning around updates, and then maybe at the very end talking about strategy, talking, getting feedback, talking some things through. Somebody has to come off mute. Uh, Okay, let me see. Chats, yes, email would be great. Zoom works, but depends on schedules and staffing. This works, the more the better, as this is on an on-fire issue. Email updates and these Zoom calls. Okay, this message is great. Yes, mix of emails and calls. Okay, so why don't we plan on that then? A mix of emails and calls. So again, like I said, you will get a weekly email with like the updated like box and information, right, on posts. But maybe we can plan on doing these more monthly, maybe these are more monthly calls, just so that folks can kind of, again, emails can get lost, but at least this way people can talk. Has this been helpful? Are there things that people are excited about that they would love to do? I mean, again, I don't want to put you on the spot, so please take some time if there are things that you want to get involved in or things that you would like to do. Sabrina, you mentioned, are there going to be future grants for home child care and daycare centers? What grants are you referring to? Grants in general, or to do this work, or which grants were you? And just so I'm clear, are you talking about grants that have which grants are you talking about? Are there grants that have not been going out from an organization? So, um, so correct me. So please, if I'm not understanding it correctly, please correct me. There are so we are thinking through, like, for this specific work, right, how to resource it out to make sure that people are not just taking time out of their day and just doing things on their own. For federal and state grants to help expand childcare. Thanks. Um, so it's interesting because in the reauthorization bill that Senator Fisher introduced, there is some language in there that provides additional funding for facilities and expansion of programs. There is no money in that bill. So the way that the federal government works, right, is that there is an authorization bill and then there's an appropriations bill. So the authorization bill right now is moving forward, but they have not introduced like an appropriations bill. We don't know where the money is going to come from, but there is language in there that says things like such sums can be used for, and they have a brand new section there for facilities and expansion of programs. So the new bill does have that language. For state grants, there aren't there there's limited grants through the Department of Health and Human Services as there has been. There's the tax credits that are currently available still that I'm hoping people are applying for, right? The refundable tax credit and the non-refundable tax credit, right? Those applications, the attestation forms are opened. They will be available online. The Department of Revenue application will be available online at the beginning of next January. Those can also be supporting, again, in-home programs and childcare centers. Um, I'm trying to think through of like what other grants might be out there. JR, are there other, what else am I missing in terms of we have there's organizations that will be most likely again um thinking about how to resource childcare programs more, support childcare programs more. But I have not heard of any specific grants being developed from what's already out there. Does that help? Okay. Yeah, Sabrina, if you have any other questions or if this is like a specific area, um, I can look a little bit more and see what else is out there. I know I think I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, JR, but Fegan actually has a list that we can send out to you, Sabrina, that goes through some of these resources. Because we've been asked several times, and and I'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's not just like resources for like the typical grants that you could receive, but also grants that you could receive through like DED, LB840 funds, for instance. Um, so Sabrina, if you could send your email to JR, she'll connect you to Mike Feakin in our office, who helps a lot of communities and programs think through that. Okay. What other questions do people have? And also, I mean, we have time, so if you don't have a 304 question, I'm also happy to answer other questions. Or JR,
Elizabeth,
do you want to answer
I
something?
would no. I connected with Reina.
Okay.
Because we're gonna do a Spanish speaking LB304 tax credit presentation. I just wanted to let everybody know I'm tracking as many emails and requests for signs as I can. Um, Further up in the chat, just dropped some ways that we are trying to support efforts to coordinate. It's up there in English and in Spanish, so let me know. Also, I am going to add um, our our amazing group of providers and community members in North and South Omaha have created a form so that if you're in Omaha, you can connect with them, stay on their list to get more information, maybe attend some of the events they're doing to help coordinate, get a yard sign, all of those things. So if you're in that area, by all means, I'm dropping the link in here. And I'll also add my email at the end of that, because really our goal is to just offer support in whatever way we can, even if it's to put you on board with something that's already happening, which really then speaks to the coordinated portion, or just to make sure that you have the correct data, whatever y'all need, just to make sure that we're coordinated and sharing a similar message. So I'm going to add the Omaha connection space and my email right now. Okay. We don't seem to have any other questions popping. Oh, wait, see, maybe I spoke too soon. No, it's just sweet Raina. I do not have any other questions showing up. Doesn't mean there aren't any. Also, feel free to email us after if you have a question that you remember. If you're like me, you're going to remember it like at dinner time, and we will absolutely get back to you with that information.
Yep. And if there's anything, again, like I would love for feedback on if you think there are things that we could do differently or things that we haven't thought about but should consider doing, right? I would love feedback on the strategy of 304. Um, and then also just general interest and thoughts around involvement for this work.
Elizabeth, this came up last night at that part of my fault included that providers, we keep getting the word out, but we realized we also haven't communicated too much to our parents
Mm-hmm.
about this. And I feel like it's not a different message, but I don't know if that's something that would be helpful to a good way to let our parents know, rather than just our providers and childcare centers and kind of usual suspects. So something that just came up. And then also, I think, what can our parents give to their employers as well, to keep pushing that along?
Actually,
Yeah,
your
that's a good
timing's perfect, Robert, because I had two questions privately, including one from one of our Spanish speaking. And add to that, Elizabeth, I think the timing of it, some of them have been asking about, and Robert and and Tier and Nicole and all, I've missed them up in discussing this very thing. Lisette Christians is running the subsidy work group up there. But even like, what is a way to do that so that it doesn't create fallout, panic? How do we support them in messaging, strategic ways? That group has a great strategic brain. We're still all trying to figure that out as part of that question to add to Robert's.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Robert. I think that's something great that we should talk about. Because you're right. I don't know. I always view, I mean, from our standpoint, from an organization standpoint, right? Provided, I think that you guys are in the best spaces to talk to the parents, right? And to talk and to help them get the resources and to support them how you need. We can just kind of help support you in that effort. I also though wonder about, some of the concern and, I'd be very curious to see what employer is actually willing to kind of like step it up. But what we've seen, at least from the past, is that some employers are not willing to do it because really what that means is that they're paying their employees low wages. And so I don't know of many employers that have been willing to kind of be on the record about that. But I also think that, more the more that we can make it again a workforce and an economic issue, the better. And if you do have suggestions or thoughts around that, I would love to hear them.
Lisette has been working closely with that Omaha group and organizing childcare South Omaha specifically. And she's been working on ways to engage around that very issue, considering your point, Elizabeth, that employers don't always want to say, but how can they anecdotally sort of work on that? And if you want to reach out to me, we can even share a little bit about how she's coordinating that and hear your ideas too on how to make that effective.
All right. Well, if there's any other questions, again, please reach out to JR and she'll help connect us. You're also more than willing to email me. I would just, again, ask if you can just make sure to include JR since she's helping kind of coordinate these efforts and making sure that we, from an organizing perspective, are coordinated and not duplicating efforts. I would really appreciate it. But I hope this was helpful. Again, if we will plan on doing more of these. But thank you for attending. I really appreciate it, especially for taking time out of your day to do it.
Thanks, everyone. You can find Elizabeth and I on the First Five website, so please reach out.
Thank you.
Thanks.